Welcome to Antarctica Did That For Me. We're a podcast for everyday people with a little adventure in their hearts. We're Keri and Cassa, and we've spent huge chunks of our time living and working in Antarctica. Welcome to a journey that changed our lives. We hope it will change yours too. Hey everyone, and welcome back. Antarctica Did That For Me. I am your co-host, Keri Nelson, sitting on the line with my very dear friend and fellow Antarctican, Cassa Grant.
Hello, hello.
Today we're talking about a subject that is, kind of near and dear to both of our hearts, one of our favorite subjects, and that is food. Yum, the food and the drink and the eating and drinking in Antarctica. When we're far away from home or on this unfamiliar continent, there's a lot of unfamiliar people around. Sometimes that right meal can make a huge difference. They call it comfort food for a reason. It brings comfort. When we don't have the food we want on that continent, sometimes it causes some people a lot of distress. Antarcticans are away from home. We're away from home for a long amount of time. And missing food is a big part of almost every Antarctican's experience. Was that part of your experience at all, Cassa?
Absolutely.
We want to make sure we dedicate this episode before we get started to the many wonderful humans who have spent time in the trenches feeding very vocal, sometimes less than appreciative, sometimes appreciative Antarcticans in the American program and really all over the continent. I know that the chefs and the people who work in the galleys work really hard to feed us, and we're just going to talk about what that's meant to us. What are some of your favorite Antarctica food memories, Cassa? Do you have one that stands out?
One of my favorite ones is I was a big omelet fan for quite a while. And so they have a special egg line that you can go stand in and get your omelet made exactly how you have specified to the person who's running the egg line. And it was also a time to just kind of stand on talk with people in the morning if you felt like it, or ignore them as much as you could if you felt like that too. But I always remember getting the same old eggs every single morning and really enjoying that part of starting my day.
Oh man, that is a really nice warm way to open it up. I think one of my favorite memories of food was that for my birthday one year, one of the chefs named Brian Tam wanted to know what he could make me for my birthday. And I'm this Midwestern girl, and there's this dish in Minnesota called tater tot hot dish. And Brian Tam made me this huge, chef's pan full of tater tot hot dish for my birthday, which was so kind of him. But then continued to feed it to Antarcticans as a special meal day forevermore and just called it hot dish. And if you've ever been confused by that dish and you've been Antarctican or why he's calling it Keri Nelson Day, that's why. But that is one of my favorite food memories of the ice. So I love that these chefs, they work so hard to elevate the mood of station through food. They have such a great tool because food is so emotive. And I've watched these chefs, I've shared offices with many of these chefs as they think, and they really do put a lot of time and a lot of heart and a lot of mental power into figuring out what next food move they can make to make station feel a little bit better or function a little bit better or just have a better season. It's really a heartwarming thing to watch happen. I think there have been some really special meals.
There have been. And I think that, they're also working under very challenging conditions in terms of availability for things,
Absolutely.
The length of hours they work, all those kinds of things. We also recently asked a group of Antarcticans about weird things that they brought to the ice. And a lot of times it was food or certain flavorings, different kinds of drinks that they really love. And that's episode 14 if you want to listen to it. But people like to bring certain things that really help them feel comforted and safe and human, basically, that they didn't think they were going to be able to get on the ice. And a lot of times weren't able to get on the ice.
Having any choice about food at all is a really, when you're on the ice, you're eating cafeteria style and you are eating at a prescribed time, fighting elbow to elbow with a lot of people for a place to get a scoop of something, to have a place to sit that may be away from people. It's hard to get away from people or find a place near your friends. Sometimes it's hard to sit near your friends. And so it can be a real mental challenge constantly at every mealtime, getting the right kind of calories and the kinds of things that you want into your belly. Really.
Food is fuel, obviously, and it will affect your mood. It will affect your experience. And so if you're not able to get the things that really make you feel good, it can really create what we would call harshing your mellow, basically. It can definitely create a not so great experience.
Did you bring any special foods or treats that you liked to the ice? What were the things that would keep you going that you missed while you were away from the other continents?
The main things that I remember bringing were loose leaf tea. So I love tea. I'm a fancy lady who drinks
You
lots
are
of fancy tea.
How many kinds of tea did you bring?
I would usually bring at least 4 or 5 different types of tea. And I would have
Okay.
I had a little special cup that I would brew it in, that kind of thing. And I would also bring ramen noodles, which now I don't even know the last time I ate ramen noodles, but I used to love having these ones called Yum Yum noodles that are just dry packet ramen noodles. But they were just so hit the spot sometimes. And sometimes you didn't feel like going to the galley and you didn't feel like being part of that whole scene. So you would just want to go back to your room and boil some water
Right.
and have some ramen noodles. And it felt really, really awesome. How about you?
It's true. The meals are good, but it is nice to have some treats in your back pocket. I mean, I am a notorious overpacker. And when I was able to work at McMurdo Station, I would send myself some treats. So I always had made sure I had some chocolate along. It was always nice to have a little bit of a chocolate here or there to end a day. I would bring things along like Kraft macaroni and cheese. Definitely the galley is making better food nutritionally and taste-wise than Kraft macaroni and cheese. But same thing like with ramen noodles. Sometimes you wanted that comfort food at home. I would bring different kinds of hot sauces. That was something that I always gave me a little boost of energy when I could spice my food up like I really liked it. And sometimes there are kinds of cheese that you can bring that don't need to be refrigerated. So if I had a favorite kind of cheese, that I would bring some cheese along, or I would get some in New Zealand and keep it in my little fridge in my room. Sometimes that's the way I felt fancy.
I'm picturing it like a spray can of like Cheese Whiz or something, even though I know
Oh
that's
my
not what it
God.
was.
Cassa, I have to say that I do love easy cheese. I'm not going to be too proud to say it.
Yummy. Oh, that's
just
pretty special. I'm not judging, but I am judging.
Fake processed cheese. I think there's definitely a taste bud of mine that's got a hankering for it every so often. I guess that's
Absolutely.
the Kraft macaroni and cheese family of foods.
Yeah. And it's funny because I mean, yeah, again, some of this stuff, it's like stuff that I wouldn't necessarily eat a lot of here, but down there, you're like, oh, that sounds really good. Most of the time I would eat mostly from the galley, or if I got like chocolate or something, it'd be from the store. And I was fine with that. But I definitely really would, if there was something that I liked a lot of, they used to make these things called magic bars that were coconut and chocolate. I mean, now I think I'm like, oh my God, that must have been like insane amounts of sugar, but it was like
They're so
sweet
good,
condensed milk, like all these things, and just like crammed together. And I would just get a bunch of those, especially when it was in
They're
shuttles.
so good.
They were great. Yeah. And that kind of thing. I would just like open a bag and like shove it into my bag in the galley, which is so terrible. But I was just like, yeah,
Cassa,
magic bar day.
That sounds like hoarding behavior, which we are both familiar with. So in this episode about food, I think we have to explain food hoarding in Antarctica. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Oh, 100%, because I was one of the worst offenders by far. I remember at one midwinter dinner, a good friend of mine was laughing at me because they made all these really beautiful special truffles and chocolates and just gorgeous like things that you get in a box of chocolates, right? And I was just like, okay, I've had my midwinter dinner. Now it's time for me to go hoard. And so I just had like a couple of bowls of these that I had like wrapped all up, and I set him next to me, and he's just like, you know what I like about you? You get while the getting's good. And I was just like, I don't know if I like that you noticed how bad I hoard. And also, I definitely don't want that to be part of my personality. So it was the first time I remember somebody noticing and calling me out on hoarding behavior, and me noticing and going, oh yeah, I'm seriously hoarding this right now. And that shows up in other ways too. But I think about that a lot of like, am I trying to get while the getting's good here? Or can I just chill out and not try to hoard whatever this thing is that I'm hoarding right now?
But there's something so psychological about it. Do you know? Because you are not the only person who has that kind of reaction and story in Antarctica. What do you think it is? Because would you say you're a food hoarder in non-Antarctica? Or was that an Antarctican thing?
No, not really. But I will say I grew up on a ranch. And so, again, we don't make special trips to town for a gallon of milk. It's like you had to think ahead and you had to prepare, and you didn't have to, but if you wanted to have a meal with all of its ingredients, you thought about what those ingredients were days in advance, right? So I think there is a tendency there just from growing up from a pioneer background, frankly. So there's definitely some of that from home as well. Because even when I lived in San Francisco, I would still go just grocery shopping once every couple of weeks. I wouldn't go like every day. And people were like, what are you doing? I'm like, gotta get my big backpack. I'm going to the grocery store. This is when I didn't have a car. And people are like, are you kidding me? Like, we don't live in a ranch. I'm like, no, not making a special trip.
Not right now.
It's an attitude too. But yes, there was also the issue of not being able to get these things later on. And so I knew that I wanted to hoard these items, basically. Scarcity.
It is exactly. That's what it is. It's a scarcity mentality, which there actually is scarcity of many things. Your favorite things in Antarctica are scarce. So
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely understand it. I came from the side of Antarctica that was always on the station services side. So I never worked in the galley, but I was definitely working in the store. And we were the team of people trying to just keep stuff around that people wanted to consume, whether it was through purchase or through taking it on the line. And so you kind of always looked at it as like, why are those people hoarding? Can't they just make sure there's enough for everyone? However, as a human, you understand the instinct absolutely, because you know that there probably isn't enough for everyone. There isn't enough for demand. And, the people who are able to sort of, I guess, fend for themselves in that way, they are going to get the goods when if you sleep on it a little bit, you might not. So you understand this completely human instinct. But food hoarding for sure is something that absolutely happens. You're not by far not the only person who is trying to track down the amount of supplies that you need for the day to day there.
But a lot of it was also just what I thought I needed too. Like I would hoard cheese on brunch on Sundays, and then half the time I'd throw it away at the end of the week because I hadn't eaten it. And it was just like, okay, well, that was weird. And then you had a great experience or story about the Pepsi.
Oh man. So I came back. I wasn't here for the formation of this story, but I came in to do a winter after a summer had gone by where they were getting rid of Diet Pepsi or Pepsi Zero or whatever special formulation of Diet Pepsi that there was. But there was only so much of a supply on station, and people were able to look up in the computer and see how much supply there was. So somebody who was a fan found out the amount and brought all of their friends in bit by bit to just raid the store of the entire supply of Diet Pepsi. And then when I came in at the end of the season, switching over to winter, and we were going dorm to dorm. I don't know if we were cleaning or what it was we were doing, but there it sits, half a pallet of Diet Pepsi that summer person was not able to consume on their own. Left there because they just wanted to make sure that they had enough for themselves. And it bummed me out as a store person because it meant a lot of people never got to buy the supply that they needed. But again, we're all humans in Antarctica. So I always understand there's sort of the primal spots we go to in ourselves. And that's one of them. I need enough for myself and I'll get it done. And then you do, definitely. You have a good food supply or drink supply. I think we only mention it because it gets to how emotive and how crucial having the right things to eat or drink are when you're far away from home. It makes you behave in a way that you wouldn't want to otherwise, but it's in us, And
that you're definitely not proud of. Hello.
Right, exactly. You look back and you're like, what was I doing? That was obnoxious. But then it kind of was the thing saving your day. Like being able to have that Diet Pepsi means the world when the world feels like it's unmanageable, which it does sometimes in those Antarctic times. So all of it, we're all really just trying to get through it all together down there. I give a lot of credit to the people who are really in charge of daily bringing us food, daily bringing us drink, because it's so important to people in the community. That's a lot of responsibility to bear as the person who's responsible for bringing that food and drink. So again, big thanks to all the people who have spent time in the galleys and the kitchens of Antarctica. We're whiny and terrible out there, those of us eating. You guys are really good to put up with us for sure. But then I think one other thing that I noticed as time went on is that I cared less about food. So my first years in Antarctica, I missed certain foods a lot. And I missed certain meals a lot. And I would bring a lot more food along to try and get me over those times when my body was feeling like I just needed that little pick me up. And as I got older in the program, I don't know, I guess I just recognized even a particular kind of food being, for me, had been a crutch. And once I recognized that that was a crutch, it made it easier for me not to have to arrange my brain about the lack of food that I thought that I had.
I also think that it kind of brings up the idea of freshies too, like because we call it freshies. It's basically fresh foods and vegetables. In the summer, you can get them kind of intermittently. In the winter, not much at all. And people get really into what we would call freshies madness, or just really, oh my God, there's freshies. Did you hear there's freshies? They got tomatoes out. Go get them. So it's kind of the hoarding behavior, but it's also like that excitement of something that we take for granted day to day is so exciting when you can't get it regularly. Now I think it's hard to not have them for that long, I will say.
I never knew how good an orange really smells, and you never will until you're in Antarctica and you haven't seen an orange in months and you haven't smelled really anything but the human body odor of the people around you. And winter ends and somebody brings you that first orange of summer and you pop it. Oh my gosh, Cassa, I will never, ever, ever forget that smell I will never forget the moisture of like even the rip when you rip that orange peel off and you breathe in and there's just some juice in the air. Oh, Antarctica really shows you what those fresh foods mean. Another examples of things I love now that I just never understood until I was deprived of them are fresh mushrooms, which feel like they taste like earth and dirt, which you're just not really close to in Antarctica. And watermelon with all of its juice trapped in its skin. I would have never liked those things as much as I did, except for Antarctica.
Well, and even a simple banana, like I never thought I was some kind of banana fiend until you couldn't really have them. And then I was like, oh God, they're so good. I just love them, you know? Or like here in New Zealand, actually, I will say we eat a lot more seasonally here in New Zealand. And there are certain things I can't get or that are harder to get here, like dill pickles. I mean, I never thought I was a dill pickle person until I moved to New Zealand. And I'm like, wait, where are the dill pickles? I actually order Vlasics from a special store now.
I love that.
Yeah. And so it's just weird little things like that that you're like, okay, yeah, I don't want to live a life with no dill pickles. So I can at least do something about it now, but you couldn't really on the ice. You didn't notice that you appreciated more as a result of being down there for sure.
One thing I think that is sort of legendary that we should talk about is to give a shout out to this event, which is the brunches of Antarctica. And I don't know how that really goes at other stations, but I know that the US program, especially McMurdo Station, the best meal of all always is Sunday brunch. And I feel like that's where you got your really good go round of food during the week.
Oh, and brunch was part of what made your one day off for most people, which was Sunday, really feel like a day off, right? You would linger in luxurious. You would linger in there for hours. Yeah, it's like, oh, I got here at 9 and I ate some food and I talked to everybody for like hours on it. Oh, and now it's 1. I guess I'll get some more food. You would just hang out in there.
Second brunch.
Yeah, and just like chow down. But it was, yeah, they did a great job of making it feel special and making really lovely foods that we didn't get the rest of the week. I always loved brunch. It was great.
I think one of the things I really liked about working in these Antarctic bases is because McMurdo Station, and by extension, South Pole is supplied from McMurdo, is the closest to New Zealand. And Palmer Station is the closest to Chile, which meant we got a lot of products from New Zealand at McMurdo Station, and we got a lot of products from Chile at Palmer Station. And you really got to taste the way some different things tasted in those cultures. It became sort of an international experience eating too. I know that a lot of the cheeses we got at brunch were New Zealand cheeses, and a lot of the dairy was coming from New Zealand. And it was kind of fun to get a look at some other countries' cuisine too.
And I think that kind of goes into some of the stuff around the different drinks that we have there as well. It's not just on where we're from, but it's also based on the Antarctic traditions of drinks. So one that I'm thinking of is something called moose's milk, which, are you familiar with this?
I don't know this one, no.
Oh, it's okay. You're not, I mean, no, you. So apparently, I don't know which expedition it was, but they didn't have a lot of things, obviously. So they had sweetened condensed milk and they had rum. And they decided to make this traditional I'm doing air quotes here.
Oh my gosh.
Traditional Antarctican drink called moose's milk. This is from Scott Base. So we decided to recreate it, and holy moly, that was
oh my gosh, Cassa.
Probably
what was it
the
like?
worst hangover I've ever had. I mean, it was delicious going down. It was just really horrible the day after, obviously, because it was so much sugar.
Condensed milk and rum.
It just made me laugh because there was another time when we were getting creative in the bar, which generally doesn't go well, right? But
one of the two.
Yeah, exactly. The moose's milk night, it went great because we all had a really good time. But,
I swear I'm going to try that. That's so weird. I love it.
It is. And actually, it's very tasty, but it's dangerous. And again, it's one of those things where it's like we didn't have the other stuff and they didn't have the other stuff. That's why they made that drink. But one of our friends was like, oh, I'm going to do something called a milky splendor. And we're like, he's cute.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what's this? And he had put, I don't even know. It was like tequila, milk, Midori were the three
oh my gosh
ingredients that I remember. And I was just like, yeah, I'm definitely not drinking that. But it was just so funny how it like built that creativity of like, well, what could I put in here? It's like when I was a kid, I used to do that all the time with food of like, ooh, if I combine tuna fish with tomato sauce, that'll be delicious, right? You know, like you're just playing around based on what you have.
Oh, I think one of the drinks that I made up was at Scott Base also. Maybe I shouldn't say that because I'm going to go work there now. Perfectly behaved person. But it was for Canada Day. Yes. And we, again, I think we're out of drinks and maybe using a shot ski, which was historically available. I'm sure it's not there anymore. We were taking Crown Royal Canadian whiskey and dropping maple syrup into it and doing shots of that, which sounds kind of like the rum and condensed milk drink, but it wasn't bad. But it was definitely an experimental Antarctican moment.
I'm sure it's super authentic to Canada as well.
Oh, sure. Totes. Oh, man.
Those are obviously creative alcoholic drinks, but we also got creative with non-alcoholic drinks. And also, you already mentioned that with Pepsi, but just different types of drinks that we found really comforting as well were things like, for me, especially fizzy water. I love carbonated water. So however that shows up, Canada Dry, like whatever, I'm into it. That stuff could just be so refreshing and just like powerful for me. But it's one of those things where, especially when it's canned like that, you really do appreciate it even more when you get it at that point.
Absolutely. And then, of course, if you don't like any of it and you're feeling really desperate, there was my friend Emily, who always had this to say about food in Antarctica. People would ask her, "How's the food down there?" And she's like, "It's great. Everything tastes like sriracha." Which is the perfect solution to making your diet exactly what you want it to be. Just cover it in hot sauce if you don't like it.
Just bring your hot sauce with you to the galley and it'll be great. Everything will be great.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were just talking about how we thought a nice way to tie this up and suggest to people an activity. A good way to do this is to think about your favorite things, your favorite foods, and plan a meal. Plan that comfort meal for yourself. Have it and live the memories. Just treasure the memories that come with the food that you eat and the food that you plan. Make that menu and see how it goes. I bet it feels really good to you. Just enjoy the memories.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really, this is why we have commemorative meals. This is why we have different holidays like that. But just thinking about, why do I like this food? Or what does this remind me of? And enjoying that, I think, is really powerful.
Yeah, I think so too. Anyway, that's what we've got for you this week. So it's been great talking to you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Antarctica Did That For Me podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support our efforts, we would love it if you would tell your friends. And if you leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, it will help us find more of our fellow adventurers. We are on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and more, or find everything, including links to our social media at antarcticadidthatforme.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep thinking about what Antarctica could do for you.